Okay, recording. So we are up to lab 7, and lab 7 is the end of the material for the first test. So I always give a week to do a lab. So this lab is due in a week, the 15th. And then after that is when it's days when we might have the test. So 15th is out because that's a week. I want to give you a week, but then sort of 17, 22, 24, somewhere in there before it gets too far away. I would like us to have that first test on labs 1 through 7. And then so labs 1 through 7, when we'll figure out when that test will be, you'll get at least a week's notice. You will tell me if you have any other major exams coming up in these days. So you're going to let me know 17, 22, 24 if you have other major exams those days. So then I can try to avoid other major exams. And then we'll pick a day for the test. Again, it's going to cover labs 1 through 7 because we'll start doing Flask. So there's new setup starting on Thursday. So there'll be some new setup and a new topic. So this is the end of the material for test 1. We're looking for possible dates. So you're going to let me know 17, 22, 24. The first 7 labs and the first 4 homeworks will be eligible for full credit up until midnight of that day of the test. Not the midnight before, but the midnight after. But you can use all of your programs on the exam. So you can use anything from my page, anything you find on the internet, anything you wrote. All those things are fair game for you to take the exam. So it's better to have these things done before. There are people who won't, but it's certainly better to do it then. There will be there'll probably be a few parts of this exam. So sometimes I will give you code and ask you to write a little bit more. Sometimes you might write something from scratch. You never have to write something from complete scratch because you have all your previous labs. Everything will be like something we've done. But something tedious like a tkinter interface, I'll probably hand you the interface and you will have to add something to it. Oh, here's, maybe I'll just have you write the function that handles a button click, or maybe I'll have you, add a drop-down list where the user makes some choices. So there'll be times when I write some code for you, and then you have to figure out where to write your code. And there'll be places where you might have to write the code. I won't give you anything. You never have to write from complete scratch because you can start with whatever program you have that's closest, copy it over and make a change, or you can type from scratch, however you work best. All right. So labs. So we're finishing material today. Labs 1 through 7 will be on test 1. We're shooting for 17, 20, 17, 22, 24. You're going to let me know about major exams. When we pick a date, then labs 1 through 7 and homeworks 1 through 4 will be eligible. To be eligible for full credit must be in by midnight, 11:59 on that day, whatever day it is that we pick. Questions? All right. My tests are all out programming. I don't ask vocabulary. I'm not going to ask you to write a paragraph about open source or anything like that. Just going to be writing programs or parts of programs. You're allowed to look anything up. So you're allowed to look anything up But if you have to look everything up, you're going to run out of time. If you're overly linear, if you're like, I can't leave this code until it works and it's problem 2, and I give you 5 things to do, then you're going to fail. You have to be willing in a test situation to jump around, accumulate the partial credit, and something, you have a lot of code, you think it's right, something's not working. That's what a comment's for. Comment it out, you say, I have some good stuff here, give me some credit, but also give me credit for knowing that it doesn't work. Because I usually have some points in there, which I call syntax. I usually have a little spot on my grading sheet for syntax. That means, and it sort of, then it ran. And so if you give me a lot of code that has an error in it and I run it and it doesn't run, then you'll lose syntax points. If you write a lot of code and it's not working and you comment it out, then I'll give you credit for however close you were, but you won't lose the syntax points. There's something to be said for knowing that something is not working. Okay. Any questions? Some of you have had before, some of you are having me for the first time. Okay, but I'm not a vocabulary asker. I'm not a trace this code asker. Give you something to do. Sometimes I give you more than one way to do something. And typically I will let you do it any way that you want. Although one of the topics is classes and objects. And if I say write a class, then you better write a class. So, but way back when we were just first starting and we had ifs or something like that, there were Boolean ands and nested ifs, and some people worked with dictionaries. And if I don't say that should be done a certain way, then however you get the job done. All right. So let's move on to today's examples with classes. All right, so. And online people especially, make sure you hang around to get credit for attendance because I haven't taken any. All right, so I'm in downloads. Let me open code in downloads. Okay. So in this example, I have a class, and then I'm going to use the class all in the same file, and then I'm going to sort of separate it out as we did with the function. First, I wrote functions and the things that call the functions, and the functions were in the same file, and then we started separating them out and talking about modules. We'll do the similar idea with classes here. Okay. So I have a class. The name of the class is hockey player. And so class is a keyword. Hockey player is just the name that I made up. And then it was followed by a colon. I am creating a constructor. This is, you can see by where my cursor is, that one of the things that I'm going to define in my class is a constructor, and it goes by __init __, or some people might call it some people will call the double underscore dunder, so they might call it dunder-init. You say the properties that you're going to insist that you have in order to construct. There is one that you always put down called self. In some other languages, that will be implied. And you might also know it from the word, say, this in other languages. So, but they make it two things here for you to get used to in Python. One is it's made more explicit by writing the word self. And the other thing is that it's this change in word that a lot of other languages you use the word this, or trying to remember what it was in in Android and Kotlin. If you didn't name it, there was it was not a class but a function. There was something of the order of this, but which also was not this anyway. So you have this more explicit self thing, and then you'll see when you call it, you won't always use that that parameter, and then there's certain special times when it shows up. So I think I have one of those. So my hockey player is going to have an ID, a first name, and a last name. That will be enough to make my hockey player, and then I will add eventually sort of more properties. I have, and that is, we are defining methods, functions that belong to the class. So that is the constructor. I have a first name and last name separated. And so I am creating a method which will combine those into the full name. It works with this method works with the instantiated object, so it has access to itself. And so again, it's like that word this in other languages. So you will say self, first name, self, last name. So we're just putting the first name and the last name together with a little space between them. Okay. There is some, I hope these are still working. There were some pages on the NHL site, which if you know the person's first name and then a dash and then their last name and a dash and the ID. Is there any more over there? No, it doesn't seem so. Then that is a page about that player. And so I have a method sort of doing that concatenating for us. Okay, here I am instantiating an object or using my constructor for the hockey player. So I don't say init, I say hockey player. You've seen that before in other languages. Then you use the name of the class. And then that, when you use the name of the class, that's going to call the constructor. That's going to call init. And here is the ID number and a first name and a last name. And now I've made that player. There was nowhere in my class where I said that this player has a number, a jersey number, or whatever it is, but I can add that on the fly. So I don't have to define all my properties in the class. I can, but I don't have to. I can add them sort of dynamically. Then I can say print the player. Well, it's an object in the class, so that's going to give me the memory location. So that's not very useful. I can say print player underscore underscore dict or dunder-dict, and that is going to throw out the properties of this player in a dictionary. Or I can specifically pull out one of the properties that I've set in the constructor. I can use a method from the class, from the object, and I can use this property that I made dynamically. So last name was a property set by the constructor. This other name was one I set after. It made one, this was just some color coding that that was given to me here in Visual Studio Code, made one blue and one white, but they're still, they'll function pretty similarly. The method, being a method, needs the parentheses. This method requires no information because all the information the object already has. So that's just a bunch of things printed to the console. I'm printing the URL to the console. I am importing a web browser and going to that page. Let's see if it works. I haven't tried this lately. It worked last time. There is whoever that is, Nicholas. All right, so there we go. So here we see the first thing I printed was just the object, and you see this this crazy thing. It just says main hockey player object at, and then gives this big long hex string. So just to show you what you mean when you say the object, you're referring to a memory location. Here's the player as a dictionary. The dictionary includes the plenum, it includes the property we added dynamically. Then here is the last name property. Here's the full name, which is coming from a method. Here's the player number, which was a property we added after the fact. And here is the URL from the URL method. And then you saw the browser pop up, and then I closed it. So that was fun. Any questions? No. Okay. So next. So that was a hockey player class. Now I'm going to, I defined the class and I used the class in the same file. What I'm going to do next is work with modules and separate the class from the caller of the class. Okay, so we're gonna close. Ooh, I didn't want to close that, but I did. So here's the separate classes. Here is the class now. Now that's the user of the class. Here's the class. And I'm doing a little bit more, so I brought in some regular expressions. So we'll play a little bit with regular expressions today. So here is the, let me close this again. This is just a comment. Here I'm importing the regular expression module. Here I'm defining my class hockey player. This time I brought the player num over as a property in the constructor. So this isn't exactly the same class. I've modified this class a little bit. The main thing I'm doing is separating the class from the calling of the class into different files, but I have modified this class. So here is the constructor, here is the self, the ID. You saw that when we use the constructor, we don't reference self. Okay, but we have the ID, the first name, the last name. Now we're adding the player number. We've given the player number a default value. So if I do not supply a player number, it will become 00. So I can say this way, I can, when I'm making the player, I can say I know the number and give it in the constructor. I can say I don't know it. It's going to be defined as a 00, and then I can add it later. So it gives me a little flexibility in my constructor. Okay, here is again that full name, just a method for my, or a function, a method for my class that is called full name. that gives you the first name and the last name. Here is the URL, which was the first name and the last name and the dash and the number. And we wanted it in lowercase. It depends on the server that is handling the NHL site. Some web servers are case sensitive and some are not. So just to be sure we're putting in the right address, I made the first name and the last name in lowercase. Okay, I'm going to, I have a convert height from string. So I'm going to give them, and here it is, I'm going to give them 511. I'm going to pass this information in. The FTIN, feet and inches, I'm going to pass in 5, single quote, a space, and 11 and a double quote. Okay. And one thing I'm going to do is, this is some of the regular expression stuff. Any white space, \s in regular expressions means any white space. And any white space I find in this variable that I passed in, I'm going to replace with nothing. So I'm getting rid of the white space. I am getting rid of the quote. That's the double quote. So you can see that the my strings are set off by quotes. And so I can't talk about a quote character because of the issue that it's what starts and ends strings, and yet it's also, in this case, the string itself. And so I use the backslash to escape the quote so that the quote can sort of become itself the quote character rather than whatever purpose it serves. Okay, so this is me finding the double quote and replacing it with nothing. And so I said it was 5 single quote. I don't know if that's a space or a tab or what it is. That's why I used white space. But the first thing I did was got rid of the space. Then I got rid of the double quote. And now I have 5 single quote 11. I'm not going to get rid of the single quote. I'm going to use it as my delimiter. And so I'm going to break the 5 from the 11 in that height using the delimiter. And now I have the 2 pieces. I have the 5 and I have the 11. And I'm going to take the height in feet, which was the 0th token, the first token. And when I split something, I'm splitting up strings. Splitting is a string thing. And so, but I want to do something numerical, like multiply it by 12 because it's feet. And so I have to put the int around it, cast it. So I take my first token and cast it as a string and multiply it by 12. So now I have the height that were in feet converted to inches. And then I add in also the inches amount. And now I know their height in all inches. So that was fun. Okay, so that is what my new class does. I added the player number with the default value. Full name we had before, URL we had before, and I added this convert height to height in all inches. Okay, let me go over to use this class now. So here I am using the class, and it's a separate file now. So the first thing I do is I import it. So from the file, hockey class only, that's the name of the file, I'm importing hockey class, or sorry, hockey player, which is the class. So that's me going to the other file and getting access to everything. And I'm saying, here's a player. Here's the ID of the player. Here's the first name. Here's the last name. Here is the 14. Then here is my second player. Here's the ID. Here's the first name. Here's the last name. I did not include a number. So he was assigned 00. And then I show his dictionary. And then I assign him a player number of 62, and I look at his dictionary again. So we'll see the 00, then we'll see the 62. So that default value gave us a flexibility in the constructor. We can have 4 arguments, including the number, or we can have 3 arguments, and then that number will get its default value of 00, and then we can assign it at a later time. So it makes for a more flexible constructor. And pardon me. Then I'm taking player 1. I am using this method, convert height from string. And I say this guy was 5'11". So there's my string, 5'11". And I am doing that conversion. So I have that conversion built into my class. I did not say the guy was 5'11". The 5'11" information is not currently part of the object. So I have to send that method, convert height from string. I have to send it some information. So I'm sending it 5'11". So it's not getting that data. Let's look back here for a second. It's not getting this feet in inch. It's not getting this FTIN. It's not getting that from self. It's getting that from an argument passed in. Okay. The object exists. So I'm not yet using a static method, if you know what that means. So, but I am using, I'm not using the data of the object itself. I'm passing in the data. So I'm passing in this data. The object knows how to convert it. And then I'm using the converted information to set a property, a new dynamic property of my player. And then I'm going to show the players that property, individual property, and then I'm going to show their dictionary. Okay, so here was my first player, Sean, number 14. Here was my second player, Nicholas. And I'm not making, I'm just saying first and second, but one was player, actually, Sean was player 2 and Nicholas was player 1, but I reversed their order for some reason. So here is Nicholas. Originally, I didn't give Nicholas a number, so it was 00. But then I changed his number to 62. I figured out somebody's height was 71 inches. And then I added that property dynamically to that player and showed their dictionary. Any questions? And then I very stupidly closed my browser and my portal, and oh. Come on, Google, open up. Sorry about this. So next, I'm going to show you some more fun with regular expressions. And what do I want? I want canvas and 341 and modules and some regular expressions. Okay. So I showed you, we just played with some regular expressions. Now I want to show you more because they're fun and useful. And what I did before, you didn't really need a regular expression. We could have lived without a regular expression for what we did for the height. We could have, the only place I really used a regular expression there for the most part was that white space. But I could have figured out what the hell was in there. Was it a space? Was it a tab? What was it? And then just done a regular old substitution. Okay, so here is some regular expression. Okay. All right, so I have this big crazy long thing called test, ABC underscore 123 underscore the at, and exclamation, exclamation, percent, $, pound, capital T, space or something, 7 space or something, 89, then a space, then D, then space, then whatever, then space, okay. I'm going to do some substituting with regular expressions and see what's there. So my big long thing to start with is called test. And I'm going to substitute into test. I'm going to get rid of all the white space. So \s in regular expression stands for white space. Plus means any amount of white space. And then I'm replacing any amount of white space with nothing in test. It just does that like in its mind, somewhere in memory. It does not change test. If I want to change test, I have to explicitly say test equals sub yada 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 test. So I'm not doing that. I'm making a new thing I call test1. So then I'm saying eliminate the white space, and I'm showing you vertical bars around it. So vertical bars and then the open and closed curly, that's where I'll substitute something in. So first I'm going to put the original test, and then I'm going to put the new test1. And I'm putting vertical bars around it because I might get rid of the things that it begins with. So it began with some white space, it ends with some white space, and we also want to see that disappear. So there are other things here, but let's just look at that first one. So eliminate white space. So here's the first one, eliminate the white space, and we see that all of the spaces go away. So that's what that first one did, \s plus, \s is white space in regular expressions, and plus means any amount. What's a white space? It is a space, it is a tab, it could be, there are characters at the end of a line, there are multiple, sometimes there are multiple characters at the end of a line that might take care of some of that. So that's what we have there. Okay. The next one, we're getting rid of \d. In regular expressions, \d is digits. So we're getting rid of any digit. So I have that big long thing. I had some numbers in there. Anytime it sees a number, it's going to take it away. And then I'm doing that twice, because I can also eliminate, I can also in regular expressions work with a set of things in square brackets. And so I can say square bracket 0 to 9. That is any digit. So \d means any digit, and square bracket 0 to 9 means digits. So these two do the same thing. So I'm going to eliminate the numbers, and I'm going to eliminate the numbers again. And let me see if I have that here. So here's eliminate the numbers. And first I have the original, and then I have the no numbers. So the spaces are back. I didn't get rid of them in the original. I only got rid of them in some new thing. And I went back to the original. So there's the spaces are back, but the numbers are gone. And that was the \d, and this was the square bracket 0 to 9, but it has the same effect. They're just two different ways of saying all the numbers. If I want to say get rid of the letters, but specifically the capital letters, I can use that square bracket notation and say A, capital A dash capital Z. That'll give me all the things in the range A to Z and get rid of it. So that is eliminating all the capital letters. So here's eliminating all the capital letters down here. And we see the little ABC is still there because that was small letters. But this I had, that's gone. Somewhere in here, I have a capital T, that's gone. The capital letters are gone. If I want all letters, I can say A, capital A to Z, little a to little z. That's two ranges. I would not say capital A to little z, because there are some things in between in ASCII code, in the ordering of symbols, of characters. There are things between the capital letters and the small letters. And I didn't want them in my set of things I'm getting rid of. So I just said A to Z, A to Z. So the square brackets means a set of things, and within the set of things, I have the range of capital letters, the range of small letters. So I'm getting rid of all letters. That was here, get rid of all letters. And you see in what I created over here, I have numbers and symbols, but all the letters are gone. If I'm in a square bracket, this is very important to say that if I'm inside a square bracket, caret means not. There, in regular expressions, a caret has two meanings, but if I'm inside brackets, it has the meaning of not. And so this means substitute anything that's not a capital or a small letter. Anything that's not a letter, substitute it with quote, quote, get rid of it, substitute it with nothing. And then let's see what we have. So I'm eliminating anything that's not a letter. And that was my last thing. Eliminate anything that is not a letter. So here's what I started with. And then I only keep the letters, the A, B, C, that one capital T, the little d, and then the whatever. Okay, so that is some fun with regular expressions. You can work with there's some special things like \s for white space, \d for digits. There's a \w for that corresponds to some kind of a word. You can use with sets of things in square brackets, numbers in square brackets or letters in square brackets. And then if you use the little caret symbol within a square bracket, that means not. Questions? Okay. So I'm going to come back to the hockey player and do something more complicated. And that is going to involve some regular expressions. So that sort of tie it together. All right. Hockey, more complicated. That's where I am. So kill that, minimize that. Let's look here. Hockey player, more complicated. Okay, so I have a CSV. I have a hockey player class, and I have something that uses the hockey player class. That's what's in the more complicated. So I have some information. I went up to the NFL site, grabbed, I guess this is the Flyers, and grabbed their information and dragged it over, I think, to Excel, and then saved it as a CSV. And I might have eliminated a column here or there, but it had an ID, it has a first name and something or other. I don't know what that is. And then a last name. And that must be the player number. And that is some kind of a position, I guess, or, yeah, I'll say a position, who the hell knows. There are letters and there are other letters, and I don't know anything about hockey, so sue me. Here's the height. That's probably the weight. Seems like a reasonable weight, doesn't it? And a birthday and some kind of birthplace or something. Okay. So that's what's in the data file. What's in the class? I'm going to use some regular expressions in my class, so I've imported the regular expressions. Here's my hockey player. Here is my constructor. Pardon me. I'm using I have the self property. I have ID, I have first name, I have last name, I have the player number. I'm setting it to 00 as my default. I have a position. I'm setting it a default value of underscore. I have a shot hand. I'm setting that default to be a right-handed. I have the height. I made the default height 72 inches. I guess that's 6 foot. I don't know. The default weight, I made 190. I made the default birth January 1st. I guess that's 1999. And I made the default place somewhere in Canada. I think they all come from Canada or something. Okay. And then I set the this first name property, the self's first name equal to the first name thing that came in, yada, yada, yada. Same usual constructor stuff. I have the full name that we've been seeing since the beginning, and nobody has any questions, so you understand it. Here's the URL, and same thing, we've had that all along. Now I've turned that height thing into a static method. I was not, previously, what did I do? I made a hockey player, then there was a method within the hockey player, and I could use it to convert. And then when I used it to convert, I set that value to a property of the hockey player. But if that property of the hockey player, the height in inches, if that's now in my constructor, then I might want to do that conversion before I've made a hockey player. That's when we use a static method. When you want to use a method of the class before you've made the object. So a static method means it's available to you without having an object of the class. So the last time I had a hockey player, I made an object of my hockey player class. Then I had access to the method. I got the height in inches, and then I set that property dynamic. Now I want to know that height for my constructor. So I want to use that method before I instantiate a hockey player, before I use my constructor. So it's become now a static. There's a test, like in a week and a half or maybe later. Am I going to have something as complicated as a static method in a class on the test? Oh, hell no. When I give a test for the homework, yeah, okay. For the lab, yeah, you can ask a million questions and get it right. For the test, I'm probably going to keep it simple, like maybe like the first example or something. Or maybe read a file or something. But so now, anyway, this is now a static method. So I don't refer to self. I had self before because when it was not a static method, you put self in it. But now I don't have self because it's a static method, but I never did use the self before. So it was right to be a static function. This is the same as before. Eliminate the white space, eliminate the double quote, use the single quote as a delimiter to split it in 2 parts, cast it as numbers, the feet by 12, add the inches, return the total. I added a BMI method, body mass index, I think that's what it is. Some calculation to say like maybe maybe you're overweight, but doesn't always work for athletes because anyway, it's just a calculation, some kind of calculation. Some number times the weight divided by the height squared. And this is at least one way to get it raised to a power. So this is the height squared, star, star 2. So that's my class. Now let's use my class. I'm going to use some more regular expressions, so I'm bringing in the regular expressions. I'm going to read the file, the CSV file, so I'm playing my usual operating system module game of getting myself sort of in the right position to read a local file. I'm importing my class from the hockey player file. Sorry, I should say that backwards. Here's the name of the file, hockey player class A, and here's the name of the class, hockey player. So from the file, I'm getting the class. I'm going to have an array of players because I want a team that's an array of players. So I'm going to open this CSV file. I'm going to read in a line. Did I have headers? I had headers. So I'm reading a line here just to sort of skip over and ignore the header line. I could do something more sophisticated and try to figure out what the headers are and then work with them, but I'm not that smart. So I'm just saying there are headers. I know what the headers are. I know the order of the columns. I'm going to skip over the, just read the first line and not do anything with it. So I'm basically skipping the headers. Then I'm going to loop through the rest of the file, play my strip and rstrip game. So get rid of any sort of blank lines, any white space hanging around, split it on a comma. So I break it up into the tokens. And so the 0th token was the number. Token 0 was this number, the ID number. Then the full thing. The next token is a full name, first name, and something, and a last name. So in the class, it's broken up into 2 pieces. So here's my crazy thing. Okay, I'm ready to, and I did this all in one line, but you can break it down. It's this is a little crazy. I split it on the comma. Then I took the first thing, which was the name, and I split it on white space only once. So you can control your splitting and say only do like the first instance. So I'm splitting, I'm using my white space as a delimiter. Before I was eliminating my white space. Now I'm using my white space as a delimiter. And I'm taking that, this is the second token. X0 is the first token. X1 is the first token. That's the name. I'm splitting it on the white space, because if you looked at that thing, there's some weird symbol in there. I don't know what it is. It's not just simply a space, but it is going to be white space. But I said only break it on one name. Why is that? James Van, James drove me crazy because he has a space in his last name, and the space is white space. And then I also had some white space between the first name and the last name. And so that's what the 1 is for. That's the say when I'm splitting, stop. So I'm not going to split on all white space, or for this James, I will have 3 3 tokens, and I only want 2 tokens. I only want the first name and the last name. Okay. So that's that weird little 1. When we've done splits before, we never had this weird little 1. That's the weird little 1. Oh, there it is, James Van Rijmsdijk. I don't know. Okay, so I'm instantiating a hockey player. So here's the name of the class, hockey player. The 0th token was the ID. The parts 0 was the first name. Parts 1 was the last name. X2 was the number. X3 was the position. X4 was the, are you right-handed or left-handed? Here is me using the static method. So convert height from string is a static method. So I'm allowed to use it inside my constructor. I could use it, I could do it up here. I could have said, you know, a height equals, and then I could have said this, hockey player, blah, blah, blah. I could have done that. And I just smushed it all together in one great big thing, because that's the mood I was in when I wrote it. But now I mixed up all my indenting, which is bad news in Python. Okay. So I could have broken some of these pieces down more, but I didn't. So if you like to have more steps, that is fine, because you have to do something like this for the Sixers, I think it is. Okay, so this is me using my static method to convert the height in feet and inches over to just inches, and then I'm assigning it, this is the position of the hockey player's height. Here is the weight of the person. When I split things, they are strings. So I start with a string, and when I split it, all the pieces are strings, but the person's weight is an integer. So I'm casting it over as an integer. And then it was, I think, the birthday, which was some string, and the place of birth, which was some string. This is that parenthesis is the end of my hockey player constructor, or dunder-init, if you will. And this is the end of the append. And again, I could break this down into 2 pieces. I could make a new hockey player and then append that hockey player. So again, I was in the mood to do this in one big long fell swoop, but you can break it down into pieces. I'm looping through my players and showing their BMI and their full name. So there are 3 things here. The player's number, the player's full name, and the BMI. The player's num and the player full name was a method, so that has the open close parenthesis, and the BMI was a method, so that had the open close parenthesis. So that was that loop through all the players, show their player number, their full name, and their BMI. I am asking you to enter a player's number, that you as the user, the terminal user. So this is at a terminal. So we are inputting at the terminal some player number. This is a sort of a search. So this says I am looking for the next player in my array, and where the player number is what the user entered. All right, that was complicated. Let me see. So here's Flyers. That's my array of hockey players, the Flyers. I said, here's a for loop, and I am saying for each thing in each object in my array of objects, I'm calling player. I am asking for the player's, the property of the player to have the player num equal to what the user entered. And I want the whole object out of this. So that's what this next does for me. It's a searching kind of a thing. I have it in a try because they might enter 52 and there might not be a 52, so it might fail. But I'm looking for the player with the number entered by the user. And then I am doing my web browser game, and I'm using my URL method, and I'm opening a web browser to that URL. And if I hit the accept, that means that something here went wrong, and I'm just saying something went wrong. So that was fun. Okay, so run this. There are all the BMIs. And then enter a player number. Let's say, I don't know any of these people. 79, Carter Hart. And there is presumably Carter Hart, yes. Okay, so that was fun. All right, so what do you have to do? Something pretty similar. All right, so what are we doing? I grabbed some information off of the roster from the spring. Okay. And I put it in a CSV. And we have to look at that CSV because it's a mess and you have to clean up. And we're going to clean it up not by going into the CSV and cleaning it up. I did do some of that. But by just playing with regular expressions, sort of reading the file and dealing with it. So there's going to be an ID and a first name and a last name and a number and a position. So it's rather like what we had. There's an age, a height, a weight, a college, and a salary. So fairly similar class to what we had for the hockey player, some new things. We're going to have a method that converts heights to meters and weights to kilograms. So look up the conversion, write a little method. And then the URL is a name and, sorry, an ID and a name with this. So we're going to print out read the CSV, make objects, make an array of, a list of objects. We're going to print out the sort of player information, and then we're going to like open a browser to somebody's page. Okay, let's look at the data file. Okay. Here's this messy data file. When I grab this, oh, I didn't clean this up as much as I thought, or did I? No, I did, okay. So they didn't give me a nice simple column with the person's ID number. They gave me, when I grabbed this file off of the internet, pasted it into Excel, they gave me some URL that uses the person's ID number as part of their image name. So this guy, Tony Bradley at the time anyway, I don't know if he's still, I don't know if these people are still in the Sixers or not. I'm not a sports guy. But we have all this crap and then the number and then .png. So I don't want you to come in here and edit this file and say, oh, I'm going to retype in the space 4065673. No, I want you to take this file as it is, and I want you to use regular expressions and just keep the number. You know how to do that. We have a file, we have an example in regular expressions. We know how to keep things, we know how to get rid of things. So keep the numbers, get rid of everything else. Okay. Here's the second token. The second token has a first name, some white space, a last name, no spaces, and their number. It's the way it came. I grabbed this stuff. I fixed the salary column because that was more complicated than I wanted it to be. But this was the way it came. And so you're going to have to go in there and eliminate letters to grab the number. And then eliminate the number to grab the name and break the name on white space to get it into two pieces. So there's some parsing. There's some real parsing here. There's some parsing here you have to do, play with the regular expressions. That's part of the exercise. There's a position, there's an age. The height's the same old game we've been playing. The weight, get rid of the pounds and the space. So more regular expression playing. The college, it is what it is, just a string. And then the salaries, probably don't convert them to numbers because there's some people that this website, when I grabbed it, didn't have their salary. And I'll tell you what I did do for you. The salaries, when I grabbed them off the page, had commas in them. And then so I had a comma separated values file. And then I had players whose salaries had commas in them. And that was wreaking more havoc than I wanted to wreak some havoc. I want you to play with regular expressions. I want you to learn some stuff. But that was making too much problems. Because some people made millions and some people only made hundreds of thousands, these poor guys. And so there weren't even always the same number of commas. So it's doable, but it was harder than I wanted it to be. So here I just got rid of the numbers. It looks here in Excel because it's formatted as money. It's showing me commas and it's showing me a dollar sign, but that's fake. That's not really there. That's just formatting in Excel. If I open it in Notepad++, the dollar sign is there. Excuse me, the dollar sign is there, but the commas aren't. So the commas were fake. They were there for real the first time I got rid of them, but now they're there fake-wise in Excel, but they're not really there. They're not really in the CSV. Any questions about what you have to do? Any questions about the test that you come up that you want to ask me on the recording? All right. Do not run away until I get my attendance. I'll start online. I don't know why. I don't like those people as much as I like the people who like to be in the room with me. But anyway. Zalisa is on the call. Adam's on the call. Peter's on the call. Where the hell are you, Peter? There you are. Ethan's on the call. Ibrahim. Too many Ibrahams. And Yulabel's on the call. Okay, I have online attendance.
Some people imported the specific model. I don't even think we need specific model because it might be an open thing. So there's different methods where you bring the statistics module, or one of my example. Function of that. Was intended. We do it by scratch. Use some, you have a list and here is my function. Then when it comes in here, it's no longer a list. Zero. That's overkill. So some people were just giving me, I think they just said min of the list. Let's click create. Two calls. So we need to make sure that this is only done. We'll call it. We'll call it down here. So I'm going to put this after this loop. Learning. And this prints the list. Down here. And when it turns year. And then it's not Now, let's look at this. Oh, this belongs. Yes. There. Then. Now, that was the whole problem. Look at the wrong thing. On the list. And then switch to the second one.
The meeting you either have to do yourself, I think, or maybe the statistics. It's 3:15, time for them, everybody move to their new positions. So I'm gonna, unless you're gonna shout out a mess question for me, I'm gonna stop the meeting.